Speaker, with your leave, I rise to present the Appropriation Bill for 2021, and more properly styled, the Appropriation 2021 Bill 2020. As has been said in the first reading, the bill is intended to provide for the services of St. Christopher and Nevis for the financial year commencing the 1st of January 2021 and ending on the 31st of December 2021. The bill, Mr. Speaker, we're having some lighting challenges.
I think it's more than mic, maybe lights also. Probably we should suspend. This Honorable House stands suspended until the lights are back. Then resumes.
It's close by, so at the tip of a finger, he has it restored. Well, Mr. Speaker, this is an important exercise in the constitutional democracy which we work in St. Kitts and Nevis. The budget everywhere is considered the most important piece of legislation to be debated in a parliament. And it is critically important. Other than a motion of no confidence, there is no other legislative agenda that assumes such significance. In the context of the Westminster model, the failure to pass the budget is tantamount to a vote of no confidence. And so we come today in furtherance of our good governance agenda. You very ably articulated the constitutional and legal underpinning for the exercise in which we are engaged. In order to service the country, we have to come, as it were, in the sunshine of public scrutiny of the Parliament to seek approval with respect to every expenditure head. And those items are detailed in the volumes that have been submitted before. $867.9 million we are proposing to have approval for to meet the business of the country for next year. Of this amount, Mr. Speaker, 97.8 million in the ordinary course of things are constitutionally mandated as charged on the consolidated fund and they need not be voted to become applicable. 2020, Mr. Speaker, will long be remembered for many things. But of everything else, 2020 will be remembered for COVID-19. That more than the birthdays, the anniversaries perhaps, has loomed so large in the lives of an entire global community that none of us dare to forget 2020. 2020 then will go down in the annals of our history as an exceptional and memorable year, as we have experienced mixed fortunes around the world and right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. At this time, we should really give thanks to Almighty God for seeing us thus far through what has been a very challenging year. On the positive side of the events that would memorialize 2020 would be our resounding victory at the polls and the return of the team unity at the helm of the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. My team unity administration is humbled by the overwhelming support and confidence that our people demonstrated in us by the tremendous victory we secured at the polls on the 5th June 2020. We have been given a clear and even stronger mandate to ensure the continued development of our federation and to secure a stronger and safer future for all of our people. They have already begun to deliver on this mandate. Yes, we have. And we pledge to work even harder to improve our delivery. This is our pledge to our people, to all who choose to live, work, and do business here in our land of beauty. As we seek to honor this pledge, we commit to working with the citizens and residents to build out exciting plans for that stronger and safer future to which the budgetary allocations would help us to fund. Mr. Speaker, all of us here in this honorable House and those listening to this address are well aware that the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted every aspect of life across the globe, including right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. It has forced us to confront situations that we never envisioned 1 year ago, nor 9 months ago. The COVID-19 pandemic has severely impacted our economy as it has that of every other nation. My government's top priority is to protect our citizens and residents from the deadly coronavirus. In this regard, we have been guided by the advice of our very capable medical officials, and there is no doubt that we have been very firm in our actions to curtail the spread of the virus here in St. Kitts and Nevis. The implementation of strict COVID-19 protocols has served us well, so much so that to date, we have had a relatively low number of confirmed cases of the virus, no community spread, and we thank God, 0 deaths in our federation. Yes, for this, we must give thanks and praise. My government understands the pain that is being felt by some of our citizens and residents. Our cabinet is determined to do everything that is possible to assist. In addition, we will continue to consult, to listen, and to act in the best interests of our people. For this reason, just about 2 months ago, we took the opportunity to engage in dialogue with a wide cross-section of civil society partners to exchange views and share ideas so that their input can help us to shape the 2021 budget. We are inspired by the ideas shared by the participants at that consultative session and from other engagements we have had with stakeholders during the course of the year. Considering our experiences during the last 8 months and our long-term vision for the development of our country, we have chosen to anchor the 2021 budget around the theme, quote, fortitude during the pandemic, resilience, recovery, and transformation, end of quote. As a small nation, we have demonstrated great fortitude in facing the COVID-19 pandemic. Our response has made a tremendous difference in helping to preserve lives and livelihoods. My government has designed and implemented a comprehensive plan of action to accomplish this objective. In response to the employment challenges caused by COVID-19, my government lessened the impact of the pandemic on displaced workers by providing income support and other helpful policy initiatives, businesses were not excluded from the government support. Overall, there has been good success, and we take satisfaction in the implementation of our expansive stimulus package, which has reached thousands of families across the Federation. The elements of that stimulus are well known, and I'll repeat just a few of them. The provision of income support of up to $1,000 per month for affected workers to the Social Security Board, and we want to commend the directors of the board for participating in this program. The injection of $10 million to boost production in the agricultural sector and ensure greater food security for the Federation. Hundreds of farmers and fisherfolks receive well-needed assistance to put their livelihoods back on track. Of course, we provided an addition of some $5 million to expand the poverty alleviation program. We made specific provision, some $11 million, to capitalize the severance fund, which we inherited way in the red. We provided additional support, some $15 million, to the Development Bank to help those who needed mortgage financing at concessionary rates. And yes, other state entities assisted with the stimulus response. So the National Housing Corporation and the Development Bank provided a moratorium on mortgage payments. We want to thank SCELEC and NEVLEC for they too organize moratorium and payments for electricity services for the initial period April to June. The business community benefited from the reduction of the corporate income tax rate from 33% to 25% for the period April to December 2020. Those entities that retained at least 75% of their employees would be the beneficiaries. Smaller businesses, they experience a reduction in the unincorporated business tax rate. There was in fact a 50% reduction from 4% to 2% for the period April to December 2020. Our Fresh Start program continued, and we had to provide additional financial resources to the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of National Security. And I'm certain that when the respective ministers come, they will indicate some of the deliverables under this stimulus package. Mr. Speaker, sir, the benefits of implementing this comprehensive stimulus package, the largest and the best in the region, are clear for all to see. Nonetheless, I want to highlight a few of the results. As at the end of November 2020, the Social Security Board had provided income support in the amount of $22.6 million. The government also provided direct income support to recipients of the PAP program, that is the Poverty Alleviation Program, popularized as the PAP. The number of recipients of PAP peaked in May to a total of 4,873 recipients. Of this total, 940 households were added as a direct result of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their livelihoods. In other words, as the pandemic began to take greater effect in the country, more people lost their jobs or lost income, and as a consequence, they now had to benefit from the PAP program, and so 943 additional persons came on board as a direct consequence of that. What if there wasn't a PAP program? What if we hadn't been provided appropriate safety nets for our people in St. Kitts and Nevis? So far, we have expended $28.4 million on the PAP program, and we anticipate that by year-end, the country, the government in particular, would have expended $31.1 million. We have spent additionally over $14 million across health, education, and national security. A total of $6.5 million has already been invested in the agricultural sector, and we estimate that as a consequence of the tax waivers, the impact of deferred taxes would be in excess of $26 million. The National Housing Corporation provided a breathing space. 117 of its clients took up the opportunity, and they benefited to the tune of $452,682. The Development Bank would have assisted 351 of its clients, and the total of that mortgage would be $3.8 million. Lest we forget, we went even further and used our position at the Monetary Council to give support to a moratorium to all other persons who were involved with commercial banks in St. Kitts and Nevis. We are happy that many persons took advantage of that relief. 1,717 loan recipients accessed the program being offered to the commercial banks. And the value of the deferred loan facilities put on by the commercial banks, National, Royal, First Caribbean, Bank of Nevis, etc., is in the region of $511 million. I want to repeat. As a result of the initiative to defer mortgage payment, which the Currency Union, the Monetary Council supported, in St. Kitts and Nevis, 1,717 persons with mortgages were able to get relief and mortgage facilities totaling over $500 million. To be exact, $511 million. No country in the region has been able to do what we have done. The range, the comprehensive coverage, and the timeliness of our response is worthy of commendation by all. We are a small country, and we're doing it better and bigger than all others. We give God thanks for that. Mr. Speaker, we have not taken anything for granted. We as a government have been careful and deliberate in taking actions to ensure that we continue to build the resilience of our country so that we can recover in the shortest possible time. And the stimulus package was part of that plan to get the country up and running as quickly as possible. Large as it was, big as it was, and much as it was, there was a thinking behind that. It wasn't that we had so much money we were giving it away. It was that we recognized that the dignity of the poor had to be preserved. It was that we recognized that the sooner we can get the country out of the recession, the better it will be. And therefore we went large and deep and wide in terms of the supports that we provided to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Speaker, one important pillar that will support our resilience and take us successfully through this pandemic is the recent passage of the COVID-19 Act 2020. And I was very pleased that belatedly we got the support of members opposite on this critical piece of legislation. I would leave it to the Honorable Attorney General and Minister of Health to speak to the importance of this, but to remind the country at this particular moment in time that it is not over. It is not over. Lest we forget, we still have to be on guard. Lest we forget, we still have to abide and comply with the public health protocols that have been outlined. The wearing of masks, the frequent hand hygiene, the physical and social distancing, etc. Sometimes we hear our people in a moment of wonder and abandon say, but nobody did. Open up the place. Let people go dance. Let people go keep their party. The timing is not right. It is not right. And we could well party today and die tomorrow under any circumstance, but in particular, in the context of COVID-19, that is one of the lessons we are learning. We have moved from a position with respect to COVID-19, where the world was concerned about the number of infections. How many million persons are infected, to now a critical criteria or criterion with respect to the assessment of one's ability to treat with COVID-19 is now how many persons die. Significant difference. No longer concern about living, denominated by those infected. Now the criterion has become how many persons die today in the USA, how many persons die today in Russia, how many persons die today in Antigua, in Jamaica. That has now been elevated because the reality is that COVID-19 is a disease that kills. And I don't want to believe that anybody will volunteer to catch a disease. And when you fail to abide by the rules, you're volunteering yourself. Worse than that, your child, your family member, your friend, as a sacrificial lamb. So I want to warn that we are not out of it, and to commend the Ministry of Health and the task force for their excellent work so far. Fortitude, you cite every day in the fine example of our frontline people in the course of the pandemic. Not volunteering for disease, but recognizing that the moment in time had come and the moment demanded the best of their sacrifice, selfless contribution to the fight to defeat COVID-19. I want to commend the Minister of Health, and indeed, we have had two excellent Ministers of Health, the Honorable Wendy Phipps and the Honorable Akila Byron Nisbet, for their leadership, and the Permanent Secretary, Dr. Dolores Stapleton Harris, and the full team at the Ministry of Health for their leadership and support at this critical moment in time. And I extend that to all the frontline workers, the police, those at NEMA. You know who you are. The country owes you a debt of gratitude. Mr. Speaker, our budget in its allocation will ensure that we continue to fight this terrible pandemic, and we are able, as it were, to make the necessary adjustment, Mr. Speaker. This pandemic, Mr. Speaker, started out really as a health pandemic. And in a very quick time, it became, or it morphed into an economic pandemic like the world has never seen. No other crisis in living memory over the last 100+ years. Who is the oldest person do we have, Senator Phipps? 100 and what? 105. That's your grandmother? All right. You see what a memory? It's the poet. 105. And in her living memory, there's not been an occasion of a crisis around the world of the magnitude of what we are witnessing now in relation to the pandemic. A point flows naturally from that. There is no template. There is no template to guide us. We have to rely again on our own ingenuity and creativity and our own insights to be able to deal with a problem for which there has been no template, no guidance. This is not a financial crisis that we have seen before. This is not a crisis occasioned somewhere in Europe. This is global in its reach. Show me any country that has been able to deal with it effectively. The most powerful country economically in the world, the United States of America, literally looks weak as a powerhouse in its ability to even deal with the pandemic. And I marvel at some of our own accomplishments, which we take for granted. Getting our people back to school, for example, in a very quick period. Preparing our children to be able to take examinations for the CXC and other exams. Happened here, as if they were ordinary times with few exceptions. But outside there, it has been a real nightmare. New York, 1 million students, locked down, shut down, education discontinued, and the same in UK. We have shown fortitude, resilience, and innovativeness, and I applaud the country of St. Kitts and Nevis. How has the world responded? What has been this economic impact? The IMF, in its latest edition of the World Economic Outlook, projected that around the world, take the world as a whole, we will have a contraction of 4.4% by the end of the year. We have subgroupings of countries. The advanced countries, which are the strongest and larger economies, 5.8% reduction this year. And the United States of America is projected to be 4.3%. With all that is happening, we anticipate that this, of course, is a moving target. For the euro area, a reduction of 8.3%. For the United Kingdom, 9.8%, and for Canada, 7.1%. In other words, all over the world, countries are taking a beating, Mr. Speaker. The COVID-19 has been real dangerous, not just with respect to our health, but with respect to the stability of our countries and our economies. Mr. Speaker, turning to the currency union, the ECCB has reported that our GDP at market prices increased by 2.8% in 2019. However, the growth rate estimated for 2020 will be negative at 16.2%. The good news is that in 2021, we will move from that marked sharp decline to a growth of 5% in the currency union. So the economic outturn for 2021 and over the medium term, of course, remains contingent on the success in the fight at defeating COVID-19. It is not over until the fat lady sings, and no gender bias, just an expression. It is not over. And we are not sure when the new normal will, as it were, reach some settlement until we are able to control the COVID-19. Not just in St. Kitts and Nevis, everywhere, because it's global. And until every country succeeds, none of us succeeds. If St. Kitts succeeds and we are getting persons out of St. Martin, which has not yet succeeded, we are vulnerable. More than ever, we are in this fight together. Mr. Speaker, turning specifically to St. Kitts and Nevis, our economy grew by 1.8% in 2019, on par with a growth rate of 1.7% recorded in our major trading partners in advanced countries. The interconnectivity of our global community, of course, has made all of us susceptible to COVID-19. In 2020, the disruptions in travel and trade, the near halting of productive activity in economies of our major trading partners has had an adverse impact on our economic growth rate. During the first quarter of 2020, the economy grew by just under 2%. The outturn was underpinned by positive growth in agriculture, financial services, transport, storage and communication, wholesale, retail, construction, and even tourism was growing in the first quarter of 2020. And then COVID-19 happened, and everything else took a nosedive. Our statistics department estimates that the economy of St. Kitts and Nevis is likely to contract by 12.5% for 2020. These estimates also project that the economy would rebound in 2021 with a positive growth rate of about 5%. These estimates of positive growth rate for St. Kitts and Nevis are broadly consistent in terms of direction with the estimates forecasted by the ECCB, which projects a 6.4% growth for St. Kitts and Nevis, and the IMF, which projects an 8% growth for St. Kitts and Nevis. Indeed, the IMF is saying that St. Kitts and Nevis will be the fastest growing country in the OECS, and indeed the second fastest growing country in 2021 in relation to the hemisphere. Mr. Speaker, this is really good news coming from international organizations, not just our own stats department, but of course, there is something on which everything else is contingent: COVID-19. In 2021, we expect principally the same sectors that were driving the growth in 2020 first quarter will again assist us. Construction, wholesale, transport, real estate, etc. For the context of the budget for 2021, we have used the most conservative estimate of growth of 5% in determining our budget predictions. Mr. Speaker, in these difficult times, we are mindful of the potential impact of any notable movement in prices, especially for persons who are suffering loss of income as a result of the pandemic. And therefore, in the course of 2021, the Ministry with responsibility for consumer affairs will keep a watchful eye on the Consumer Price Index. Mark you, for the first 6 months of 2020, the Central Bank and other publications have recorded that prices fell by 1.3%. The deceleration in overall price levels was influenced by decline observed in the services and non-food indices of just under 1%. Food and beverage index, however, moved up by 1% during the period. My government remains committed, Mr. Speaker, to the continued advancement of the consumer protection mechanism within the Federation. And in 2021, very early, we will bring to Parliament for adoption the CARICOM Model Consumer Protection Bill. This bill will enhance the rights of consumers and bring about a better standard of behavior for the trading in goods and services. Mr. Speaker, how we will get things moving, we just outlined some of the growth drivers, and I want to spend a bit of a time speaking in a more detailed way in some of these particular growth drivers and some of the growth drivers. The construction sector continues to provide employment for many of our citizens and residents. It is the primary source of income for many families. This sector is quite resilient, and my government will continue to make the necessary investments to further enhance that resilience and transform the economy. In 2019, the construction sector grew by 1.8%. This growth was primarily due to an increase in the contribution of locally financed construction activity coming from both public and private sectors. Such projects as the rehabilitation of the Island Main Road, of course, have impacted well upon employment and earnings in our country. Segment 1 of Phase 2, which encompasses the road network extending from Keon to Sadlers, was completed in December 2019. Segment 2, which extends from Sadlers to Challengers and stretches from Camps Roundabout to the airport roundabout via Keon Street and Wellington Road, commenced in March of this year. Of course, COVID-19 interrupted those construction works. As at the end of November, the good news, though, is that approximately 78% of the work in Segment 2 had been completed. To date, the government has spent on this project $55 million. Mr. Speaker, in spite of the COVID-19 setbacks, work on the project will be fully completed, we anticipate, in 2021. Our major investment in improving our road network brings into perspective the government's vision of a modern St. Kitts and Nevis and the transformative impact of resilient public infrastructure. The efficiency gains from a reliable road network and the resultant enhancement in the quality of life in our communities is well known. Mr. Speaker, one component of our road network which bears mention is the careful insertion of sidewalks and lanes, and you see them almost everywhere, Keon, Atlas, and Tabernacle, to name a few. This, of course, has brought a sense of pride and excitement to our people. Look how we transformed the washgut at Keon. Anytime there was inclement weather, there was fair. We have changed all that. Look how Minister Hamilton has ensured that the sidewalk by the school, we have provided lanes for the safety and security of our people. This is in stark contrast to what happened before. 93 to 95, you had the resurfacing of the country's road network. Never happened again until the team Unity started this project. We shall bring closer to it next year. Mr. Speaker, our modern air and supports are critical infrastructure that are necessary for the transformation of the economy. The government, therefore, will continue to invest in the upgrade of our air and support to facilitate travel as we transform our country and its economy. These upgrades are expected to support the ease of doing business and encourage investments. Notwithstanding the challenges faced in 2020, CASPER diligently worked to complete the rehabilitation works at the RLB International Airport. Those who come in have hailed the reorganization, the physical work that has been undertaken, infrastructural work at our airport. And then they begin to understand what we meant when we say that we are delivering on the promise of a stronger and safer future. We are setting the stage for the recovery of the tourism plant and the transformation of our country, even in the face of uncertainty and turmoil caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the last 4 months, government made major investment and worked diligently to ensure that our international airport remains a safe space for incoming and outgoing travelers, as well as for those who work at the airports. We invested a total of around $3 million to retrofit the arrivals area and convert the VIP lounge into a medical screening room in accordance with the standard established by our national task force. So there is no VIP section now at our airport thanks to COVID-19. That has now have a new purpose, retrofitted as a medical screening room. Work was also done in the departure lounge to provide the required spacing necessary in the context of the new realities of fiscal distancing made necessary by COVID. Mr. Speaker, the ongoing works of a capital nature. We have worked, for example, with the CDB in doing an assessment of some of our coastal roads, in particular Fort Lands, that has been long in coming, the Irish Town Bay Road and New Guinea, and we are expecting, having completed the engineering designs, to prioritize expenditures in the near future in relation to those three areas, Fort Lands, New Guinea, that I have just outlined, and the Bay Road, Irish Town. It is expected that these projects will cost about $52.3 million. So when you hear that this small country has a budget just under $1 billion that the government alone will be spending in 2021, is to do all of these big things and more. It is to ensure that this government can provide moral leadership in the treatment of its employees. Some businesses had no choice, they say, but to lay off workers. This government every month has paid on time its employees. Some of them staying at home, and they have been paid. We must not take these things for granted. Elsewhere, closely, we hear countries say, well, we will not be able to pay. And what we will do, we will come up with a pay later plan for public sector workers. not here in St. Kitts and Nevis. This is what, when you manage the country well, it allows you to do. When the rainy day comes, as it always will, we are in a strong position to be able to keep our head above the water. So, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to provide support in 2021 for the construction sector. We will partner with private sector and, of course, with state-owned corporations to ensure that we incentivize the construction sector. One example of that is the partnership, not partnership, but public-private sector engagement we had with TDC in the build-out now or the construction of Joa's Garden residences, which will soon be in full swing. And we have taken similar initiative. For example, reduce the stamp duty on real estate option of the CBI program to about 2.5% to facilitate construction work. Mr. Speaker, we are heartened by the reports of a number of public and private residential developments. We expect in 2021 to see the build-out of Kisola Boutique Hotel, Paradise Suites, and I mentioned Dua's Garden. We also expect to see significant villa and condominium development at the Royal St. Kitts Hotel. This, of course, will add impetus to the economic activity in the country. Agriculture, Mr. Speaker, has been an underserved sector of the economy, but we understand how important food safety and food security are to the country. Agriculture, in our view, has the potential to generate real wealth and provide decent jobs for our people. And my government, therefore, has identified this sector as a major pillar of our strategy for recovery and transformation. We believe that our investment in this sector is well placed, and we hope to obtain bountiful returns, including enhancing food and nutrition security within our borders. Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Agriculture comes, he will speak to the agenda for 2021. There are three main sustainable development goals that feature in our support for agriculture. These goals are the Sustainable Development Goal 2, 3, and 12 outlined by the United Nations. Zero hunger. No one in St. Kitts and Nevis must go to bed without being able to eat. So we must have food in abundance. Good health and well-being. Proper selection of our items for their nutritional value. And of course, responsible consumption and production. And we will turn to that responsible consumption and production a little bit later. But it's important, of course, that we take our agricultural sector with a greater degree of seriousness. And we would wish to see more people taking or making a conscious decision to buy local, eat more local. Let the money circulate here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Let us for once take that giant step forward in transforming agriculture, because it always has been with us and always will be. It was sugar, it was cotton. It was coffee for a little while up at Phillips Mountain. Agriculture has its place, and we have, of course, just as we have given support to tourism, just as we have given support to manufacturing, be able to give substantial support to our farmers and fishers, and we are committed to that. This year, we offered a stimulus in addition to the regular budget of $10 million. What did they get with it? When the minister comes, he should speak to that. Free wires, free fencing, free seeds, various inputs were given to our fishers and farmers. They have never received such support before in the context of a disaster. More lands were put into the cultivation, vegetables and fruits, etc., as part of our stimulus package. And in the formulation of this budget, we have put aside an additional $3 million as a further stimulus to support the agricultural sector. When I spoke with the Director of Marine Resources, Mark Williams, he said the stimulus worked well, but it finished quicker than we thought. Government is now ensuring that we fill that gap. Fill that gap. And so we are counting on Bishop Collins and the minister to provide the leadership to ensure that the funds allocated are responsibly used. We're not making a case for spend. We are saying identify clearly areas of need and target those resources there. I want to hail the efforts to restore the Bayford's Farm and to hope that this year we will have deliverables coming from the Bayford's Farm. Bayford's had been a good idea in the past, a good intervention for food safety and security, a good program to showcase the best of what could happen in livestock production, milk, meats, and the various varieties of farm livestock that we could have here. Regrettably, over time, Bayford's went to the dogs. It is time for us now to do a better job, and we have provided the resources to take us further forward in that regard. So, Mr. Speaker, we propose to invest $15.8 million to support the work of the agricultural sector. And agriculture here must be taken in the context of the FAO's definition of agriculture to include crops, livestock, and fisheries, and forestry development. Amount of $3 million I just spoke to will be directed as a further support to the farmers and fishers. We hope, of course, that this will encourage more of them to get on board, because they know in the Team Unity administration, they have finally found a reliable friend. So I want to thank all of them. Several of them were honored just recently as part of the annual awards. Fishers were honored, our fisher folks, our farmers, crop and livestock, and we want them to know that they continue to be important. Turning quickly, Mr. Speaker, to the tourism sector, which has been one of the sectors most negatively affected by the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, this has long been one of our mainstay, and it will continue to be, notwithstanding we will make deliberate efforts to transform our economy. Prior to COVID-19, we were on the growth path. First quarter of 2020, air arrivals were trending upward, recording a total of 31,073 passengers as at the end of February. At that time, the tourism arrivals were up 5% when compared to 2019. In 2020, we had further good news. Koi Resort Courier Collection by Hilton made its debut in St. Kitts, increasing our room stock by 102 rooms and adding further appeal to travelers who would wish to come to our federation and make it their destination of choice. This new addition was recognized by Forbes as one of the 8 of the most exciting new hotels of 2020 and one of the 10 best new Caribbean resorts in 2020 by Islands Magazine. Yes, we also note, Mr. Speaker, that the commissioning of the second cruise pier at Posante enabled our federation to welcome 4 cruise ships simultaneously. That was our Christmas gift in 2019, when the Celebrity Summit and Seabourn Odyssey docked at the newly constructed pier, while Britannia and the Anthem of the Seas moored at the original berthing facility, indicating prospects for continued growth. Mr. Speaker, all this progress was interrupted with the advent of the COVID-19, and regrettably, many persons who had relied on that subsector for support lost their job. Indeed, the World Tourism Organization reported that around the world, between 100 and 120 direct tourism jobs were at risk, with $910 billion, or 910 billion to $1.2 trillion expected in the lost earnings from the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Tourism comes, he will outline some of the initiatives that we have taken to prepare St. Kitts and Nevis for a new wave of arrivals in 2021. We have opened our borders, Mr. Speaker. We have opened our borders on the 31st of October, allowing in large measure our nationals to return home, permanent residents to return here, and visitors who wish to come in to be able to do so. Globally, the demand for travel is down. Indeed, just the other day, I was reading a presentation by one of the functionaries of a tourism arm in Barbados, and he was saying since the opening of their borders, their occupancy, as I understood it, was down to 10%. 10%. So sometimes when you hear persons say, open the borders, you must always ask, to whom are you going to open? No fault of Barbados, no fault of St. Kitts and Nevis, no fault of Antigua. The reality is that no one wants to go anywhere when there is a fear that he or she may contract the COVID-19. Will you go? Will you go? And somebody put a bet, and I don't want to call somebody who was betting me. As soon as the borders open, which member of parliament will be the first to travel? I said the leader of the opposition, and I hope I win the bet. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, today, Mr. Speaker, I bring a message of hope to all our citizens and residents, particularly those who have been engaged in the tourism sector and who have been most affected by the economic fallout of the pandemic. We have improved the tourism product before the pandemic so that livelihoods associated with this sector would be enhanced, and our citizens and residents shall prosper. My government and the Minister of Tourism has a track record of providing solutions, and we will effectively utilize resources to transform the tourism product and usher in economic recovery that will improve the quality of life for all our citizens and residents. The yachting subsector and health tourism will see substantial activities in the near future as we diversify our tourism product. We will also put more emphasis on long-stay visitors because of the higher and more inclusive impact they will have on our economy, creating jobs and many opportunities for income generation by our people. So we have a plan, and the Minister of Tourism will delve more into those particular programs, but the work is ongoing. Marketing has already started. Our outreach to the yachting subsector has already started as we look for new areas. It is not by accident that we have an entity here already engaged in the provision of high-quality health care. And when things get to normal, we anticipate that some of those persons with high income who want to have their health care in a situation of great privacy and to enjoy the therapeutic environment here will be coming to St. Kitts and Nevis. So there's a lot of work to be done in the tourism. Yesterday at the cabinet, for example, we discussed the constructive role for the eco farm at Foy's area in the build-out of our tourism project, how we could get those who are part of the cruise travel to spend more money in St. Kitts and Nevis by providing new opportunities and new products. Minister then will discuss most of these. Mr. Speaker, small and medium-sized enterprises are critical for the ongoing development of our country. This year alone, Mr. Speaker, we have achieved an historic high of over 800 approvals for business license. This has been the highest on record at the Ministry of Finance. It is envisaged that the new Ministry of Environment, which we recently launched after the election, would work in tandem with the other agencies of the government, such as the Small Business Development Center, the Ministry of Finance, and the Intellectual Property Office to assist our small, our micro, our medium-sized enterprises. Mr. Speaker, we are also excited by the exuberant reception we have received in terms of the mandate given to the Ministry of Entertainment, the Ministry of Talent Development so far. This is the main arm of the government that is charged with the responsibility to transform the entertainment, the creative and innovative industries through entrepreneurship and the economic value creation in our federation. We recognize the extensive possibilities of building the enabling environment for our talented young people to deepen their creativity to produce innovative content, products, and services. The rich nexus of twinning the unique, creative, and innovative talents of our people with the income-generating potential of entrepreneurship is encouraging and must be tapped. That ministry and its work hold great possibilities to create new sources of employment, wealth, and sustainable economic activity. We are equally pleased that this concept has been taken on board by private citizens who share our vision. Speaking about positive coming out of the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, we saw several small persons, in a manner of speaking, coming forward, showing their creativity and engaging in new areas. Mask making became a fashion. You look around this room, from what was to what now. In the fashion industry, in terms of mask making. And our people everywhere, in Bastia, in the rural parts, have engaged in it. I could recall Miss Weeks, Winifred Weeks in Molyneux. Could recall a Faustina Wilson. Could recall another lady at the Mansion Manse engaged in the production of masks. Everyone has its unique touch. I even noticed that the Deputy Prime Minister mask marked Merry Christmas. So he started his 12 days of Christmas very early. We want to commend those kind of creativity. Right here, we are doing the very things of which entrepreneurship is made of. I want to commend in this regard the work of the recently established Professional Association for Creativity and Entertainment, PACE, and the Robotics Association in helping to organize the persons operating in the sector to form non-governmental organizations. These types of organizations are not only useful in terms of giving a voice for their members, but by their collective ability to create value-added and joint ventures. Mr. Speaker, the members of the PACE, this new association of entertainers, are led by Mr. Azem Bailey. Azem is one of those persons who had gone abroad, invested in the professional development of one involved who could provide support services to the entertainment industry, and I want to commend his leadership now. Among the leadership of that PACE group is Mr. Adrian Lamb, well-known personality here in St. Kitts, with a lot of talent, a lot of knowledge of music, and we really want to see this group build out. We really want to see this become the genuine, legitimate representative of entertainers in the country. I want to commend Minister Byron Nisbet because she has been engaged with that group in a very significant way as we attempt to formulate policies, some of which she will outline, to take that new area of engagement in a more constructive part to contributing to the economic build-out of our country. Mr. Speaker, one other important area in terms of our support for entrepreneurship, small and medium-sized entities, which I wish to make reference to, is the work of the Intellectual Property Office. In our view, this office would play a critical role in the ability of our Ministry of Entertainment and Talent Development, etc., to add value to the creative industries. Close collaboration between these two entities would be necessary as the office plays a vital role in providing the necessary legal protection for creative work, while at the same time helping to improve the ease of doing business for emerging small entrepreneurs. The Intellectual Property Office continues to receive the support of international partners such as the World Intellectual Property Organization and the European Intellectual Property Organization to advance its work in areas such as the review of existing patent and trademark legislation. And we are exploring the possibility of introducing new legislation related to geographical indications, which would provide protection for marks, for signs and symbols that indicate which associated goods originate from a specific geographical area or country. All these and more, Mr. Speaker, are part of the new trust to encourage our sons and daughters to assist themselves, to use their creative energy, to use their talents for their own advancement. Too many talented people, Mr. Speaker, are not sufficiently engaged. Those of us familiar with a particular scripture would know the story of those with the talent. And I see Pastor Cumberbatch is here, and I will lead him until after break to tell us all the story of those who utilize their talents, how you can multiply what you have if you put your talent to effective use. And one of the things that the Ministry of Entrepreneurship shall do is to help our people find their creative talents and put them into effective use. And I am so happy that the new minister and elected member for St. Christopher III would lead this particular area. She has a history of involvement in the entertainment industry. She has been a beauty queen, a talented queen, and many other queens throughout her youthful years. And so she comes to the ministry with a sense of the realistic demands that people out there have in relation to this ministry and how we can, in fact, help them more. Mr. Speaker, to further incentivize the entrepreneurial spirit, my government will, in 2021, make a special tranche of $5 million available to assist those who are looking for concessionary interest rates through the Development Bank. So we'll have a special carve-out to help persons in that industry. Turning now, Mr. Speaker, to ICTs. With this will continue, of course, to be a key pillar in the recovery and transformation process. Not surprisingly, our vision for transitioning to a digital economy remains a high priority for the Team Unity administration. Last year, during the budget address, I shared with the country our vision to become a world leader in the delivery of digital services to our citizens, our residents, and of course, our investors. We are therefore utilizing our comprehensive digital government strategy to guide the rollout of the digital transformation process in the public sector. Earlier this year, we initiated and concluded the foundational work necessary to assist with the selection of an appropriate online payment system for the government. I am advised that we are now at the selection stage and would be in a position to implement the online payment system throughout the whole of government service by the first half of 2021. Therefore, during 2021, clients doing business with the government will have increased payment options. This, of course, would lead to savings in time taken to complete transactions and an improvement in the overall efficiency. It will, of course, bring us closer to the currency union, the ECCB's goal of a cashless society. So rather than have persons staying in line at the Inland Revenue Department, at Customs, we will have more of these transactions facilitated using the updated technology. We will, of course, continue our build-out in the technical area and technology area with the expansion of the government-wide area network to include connectivity to some 14 additional ministries and departments. This expansion, I'm advised, will provide a secure ICT infrastructure for more reliable network connectivity. As we integrate more of our operations via the internet, cybersecurity remains of paramount importance. To ensure that the overall cybersecurity posture of the public sector is improved, the IT department has been engaging in discussions to develop a cybersecurity framework that will facilitate cyber resilience and allow for real-time threat assessment. We would also develop an action plan for mitigating the risks of breaches that could compromise our critical IT infrastructure and services. This work, along with the development of a strategy to guide the digital transformation across government operations, would be tackled in earnest in the incoming months, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend an area of private-public partnership, and we welcome the progressive involvement of the private sector in the build-out of our e-society platform. In this regard, I want to commend the cable's innovation and outreach in the world of e-platforms. Our society at large stands to benefit from some of the initiatives that the cable has recently outlined. They include, for example, the provision of free Wi-Fi hotspots in all community centers in St. Kitts and Nevis. We want to commend the cable for that particular initiative. We are bringing technology to the fingertips, improving an accessibility and affordability. And it is good that a domestic company is taking leadership in this critical area for global engagement and development. The cable has promised to offer up to 200 specially developed high-speed internet packages to approved entrepreneurs by the new Ministry of Entrepreneurship and Communications. Another good deed. Could somebody give the cable appreciation? Thank you. These packages, I gather, will have internet speeds of 160 megabits per second download and 35 megabits per second upload. They will commence the deployment of a multi-million-dollar fiber-to-the-home network upgrade, which would result in high-speed internet to all households in St. Kitts. That would be amazing. Because from time to time, our people complain about the unreliability of the internet service. And we are happy now that through the fiber-to-home network initiative, we will have high-speed, reliable internet to every household. Indeed, if this were not to be realized, I believe we will take the cable to court to enforce it. I want to thank Patricia Walters for providing real leadership, though, in this particular area. And it is part of the all-of-society approach to digitalization in St. Kitts and Nevis. I see Mr. David Lake from Floyd here, and I want to encourage him and all the other critical service providers in this area to aggressively match the cable's endeavors. The more we have contributing and leading the way in the build-out of ICT in our country, the better it is for all of us. Mr. Speaker, I want to turn to the CBI program. This program, of course, continues to make real difference in the lives of our citizens and residents. The CBI program continued to be one of the major contributors to the economy in 2020. We expect that this level of contribution will be sustained in 2021. Despite some setbacks related to the pandemic, the volume of applications for the year so far has improved. Applications have come from all over the world, indicating that we are the platinum brand. They have come from the United States of America. They have come from Asia, the Middle East, Europe, and Africa. We have become the preferred choice of the discerning investor owing to our high quality of life index. And again, when we go through the UN publications and we look at the quality of life measures, you see St. Kitts and Nevis, the smallest independent country, looms large ahead of many others. And this is noticed by people who are wanting to make a choice in terms of the country they will adopt. So the quality of life index is an important indicator. The strength of our passport and the recognition that we are the oldest and the best, we have a reputation to protect. Our CBI program continues to be ranked as one of the best in the industry. The latest Henley and Partners Passport Index ranked St. Kitts and Nevis #1 in the OECS and #2 in the Caribbean, with visa-free access for a total of 156 countries. I want to commend the Minister of Foreign Affairs for assisting in the build-out of our diplomatic footprint. 156 countries to which we have visa-free entry or ease of visa and entry to the airport. I gather that we have just increased it by one, so we now have 157 countries to which we have ease of entry. This is no mean achievement. Countries all over the world, more powerful and larger in terms of the economic space, their citizens don't have the privilege of moving and getting welcome in other countries. India, for example, is a powerhouse in technology, in its diversification of its economy. Indians have problems in terms of the level of access they have from country to country. And all over the world, you have countries like that. Right here, St. Kitts and Nevis has visa-free access to 157 countries. There was a time not so long ago when we had visa-free access to Canada, an important partner, and we lost that particular opportunity. But we will say more about that as the debate continues in this matter. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen the program further, we will bring amendments to the ESCO bill, which will ensure that clients' funds are received and ultimately used for the construction of relevant projects. This will further enhance the integrity of our real estate market. In 2021, we are projecting that we will have increased activity at New Era and at Seaview Gardens project. Existing projects such as Bush Hill Estate in Nevis, Caribbean Dreams Investment Limited, the Galaxy Group, and Golden Rock Development should continue to contribute to economic activity in St. Kitts and Nevis. With the increases in sales related to land-based development projects, we expect construction activity to pick up pace and thereby increase the contribution of the CBI program to the achievement of positive GDP outcomes in 2021. Mr. Speaker, our CBI program continues to be a leader in innovation in the international marketplace. Very recently, my government took the decision to expand the reach of the program by providing the opportunity for private homes to be sold under the CBI program. This initiative would create opportunities for our real estate agents, giving citizens and residents of St. Kitts and Nevis the opportunity to participate in the program if their homes meet the value threshold and other appropriate standards which will be outlined by the CBI Technical Committee and the various related agencies. Of course, the development of the real estate market would add new jobs in the construction area. The Cabinet also agreed on what we call the alternative investment option to be used for privately supported projects which are in sync with clearly outlined government initiatives. Mr. Speaker, the environment in which our CBI program operates is highly competitive. We have to maintain our platinum status and utilize it as an instrument to facilitate economic growth and expand the fiscal and economic space of our country. This program is a provider of foreign exchange, and we can leverage the incredible talented pool of our diasporic community to help meet any skill gaps in our country. Additionally, it can bring new ideas and networks to advance the development trust we have determined. In 2021, we will be more deliberate in the following areas: target marketing of the CBI program in existing and new markets. We would want to encourage our economic citizens to come to live and work and invest further in St. Kitts and Nevis. It's interesting now that one of the buzz is inviting people to come to the Caribbean and other islands for long stays. I believe in this area, given the spread of our citizens now across the globe, we have an opportunity to relate to them and to get them to come to St. Kitts and Nevis more often, make investment here, and assist with the economic growth and development of our country. We will also implement new options and innovations to the program as they relate to the alternative investment option. The alternative investment option, for example, can provide a mechanism to support key priority areas, such as financing programs for youth development, build out of our digital economy, upgrade of our technical and technological skill sets, meeting the huge demand for homes at the lower, middle, and high end of the income ladder. We will be alert to reforms and developments in the international marketplace, which may threaten our platinum brand. In this regard, we will procure services of intelligence gathering experts and persons of influence who can intervene in the critical marketplaces and capitals so as to promote and/or defend our CBI program. We will be more agile in our legislative support, Mr. Speaker, for a stronger CBI program. And just yesterday we had that conversation at the Cabinet regarding possible threats to the program and how we are going to deal with that. What role will the new department that deals with international taxation, housed in the Inland Revenue Department, play in support of our CBI program? What role will our diplomatic corps play as we begin to build out and attempt to receive more benefits from a novel idea? CBI program, an idea that St. Kitts and Nevis gave to the rest of the world, legislated way back in 1984, long before any other country was able to devise a program. And now that has gone all over the world. Europe, countries there with their CBI program. United States of America, with its own pathway to citizenship if you are to invest in underdeveloped areas of the United States of America. So we have led the world in this particular area, and we have to ensure that we do not, or ensure that we benefit tremendously from this new pathway for growth and development. Mr. Speaker, I turn now to social development, Mr. Speaker. Clearly, COVID-19 has brought fundamental changes to the way in which we manage our lives and operate as a community. My caring government has strengthened and expanded the number of social safety net programs to lend the hand up required by struggling families during this very difficult period of time. We have spoken before about the Lifesaver that the PUP program has been to many people who, without this, would not have been in receipt of any income from a legitimate source. So, Mr. Speaker, we will continue, by and large, to provide support to our social safety net programs. There are many. I am advised that across the Caribbean area, St. Kitts and Nevis has the largest number of social safety net programs. Minister Hamilton will perhaps speak to this. We have voucher program. We have programs targeting our women folks. We have programs targeting our fathers. And the range continues in terms of the full range of support services that this government provides to the vulnerable in our community. And we give the assurance, and the 2021 budget estimates provides for the build-out of the support to those various programs. In particular, we propose to spend, Mr. Speaker, $27.8 million to continue to assist our people who are in need. In 2021, we will take proactive steps to review the procedures for accessing the PAP program in particular and ensure that only those deserving, only those who meet the strict criterion of a household income of $3,000, below that, will be able to benefit from the program. Indeed, in the context of the pandemic now, we have been a little bit more liberal. We have made it a little bit more facilitating. This, of course, is part of the caring government that we have. And in times when times are hard, we have to ensure that the policies provide some sense of scope and opportunities for those who have genuine need to be able to benefit from these programs. Next year, however, all things being equal, we will review the program and we will ensure that the goals we had set early with respect to the PAP program and other programs, that they are in fact being adhered to. We will want to ensure that we review the beneficiary list. So as persons' income would have improved and they go beyond the threshold of $3,000, then they are excluded from the program. And those who may have fallen now into the $3,000 maximum household income, that they will have the opportunity to benefit, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our efforts to build a stronger and safer future for our citizens and residents cannot be undertaken without access to current and accurate data. And in this regard, we remain committed to advancing the implementation of the 2021 Population and Housing Census. This undertaking will facilitate evidence-based policy making as we endeavor to provide access to essential services and basic infrastructure. I want to take the opportunity to announce that September 16, 2021 is designated as Census Day for St. Kitts and several other member states within the CARICOM. Enumerators will be collecting data, such as the place of residence of all our citizens and residents. This information will determine the official record of the population distribution and other socioeconomic data across the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. This information would be relied upon to indicate in real terms what additional investments may be required to meet the needs of the various communities. I want to encourage all persons to cooperate with the enumerators in this undertaking, which will undoubtedly redound to the benefit of us all. Mr. Speaker, turning now to skills development and human resource development in our country, I want to begin by commending all educators. And we have quite a few here this morning coming now in new and upgraded positions. But if we believe the best gift we can give to our children is the gift of education, all of us will owe a debt of gratitude to the teachers. So we commend them. Equally, my government salutes the administrators, indeed the students, the parents and caregivers who have all made sacrifices to ensure that our nation's children stayed safe and engaged during this period of the pandemic. The critical process was guided by the Ministry of Education's COVID-19 response plan in order to support self-paced online learning. Flow Study was selected as the main digital platform to engage our students virtually. And we want to commend the CEO at Flow, Mr. David Lake, who is here, and thank him for that partnership. I'm advised that all public school students in the Federation were assigned a Ministry of Education managed email address to allow access to the platform, and that access was made free of cost. We have never shirked as a government from our commitment to provide a quality education that is affordable and accessible to all. I expect that the Minister of Education, when he comes to speak, would elaborate on the Universal Service Fund, the support provided to secure 400 laptops and 1,800 tablets, as we sought to ensure that no child was left behind during the challenging period. The ministry, of course, took very special precautions to ensure that our fifth form students were able to write their exams. And I want to thank P.S. Hodge and the entire team, of course, and the ministers of education that we have had, the Honorable Sean Richards and now the Honorable John L. Powell, for their support to the education fraternity during this very difficult period of time. An important aspect of our education for the future would be the build-out of our technical, vocational, and education and training programs. And in this regard, we are way advanced in terms of the build-out of several projects under the CDB-supported program. And we are seeing results of this in Nevis. We are seeing results of this in St. Kitts. In August of this year, for example, the much-anticipated groundbreaking for the new wing at the Gingerland Secondary School was held. It is projected that the civil works at this institution will be completed by the third quarter of 2021. During the month of August, work also commenced on the construction of TVET spaces at 5 secondary schools and St. Kitts. It is anticipated that all works across these institutions will be completed by the first quarter of 2021. The civil works required at the Advanced Vocational Educational Center, AVEC, and the Charlestown Secondary School will be pursued during 2021. And we could go on and on in relation to these developments. The certification of 20 teachers in assessment verification, the training of all principals and deputy principals in TVET leadership are all important developments in our education sector. The Master Instructor Training at the Caribbean Vocational Qualifications CVQ Level 4 is now being offered to 10 teachers who are engaged in training and development. The completion of the verifier training will allow our own TVET Council to complete the applications, self-evaluation, and other pertinent requirements for the TVET quality control and assurance process in order to become certified CVQ awarding body. When this happens, this will be a historic moment for us in terms of TVET education and a real accolade to our leadership in providing a quality education in the region. In other words, just as HART and other entities in Jamaica and elsewhere are allowed and seen as a credible reservoir of information in terms of certifying courses and programs in technical and vocational education, our TVET Council, once accredited, will be able to do these things. Then we could certify more persons fit for work right here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Speaker, during 2021, the Ministry of Education will advance the implementation of the 2017-2021 Education Sector Plan. And of course, we will try to make up some of the time lost in the build-out of this plan as a result of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, importantly, in support of the work in education, it has been proposed that the Ministry of Education would be provided with $75.2 million in the upcoming fiscal year for carrying out its recurrent programs and activities, and a capital budget of $28.8 million. These resources would assist the ministry to continue to build the resilience and support systems necessary to improve on the delivery of quality education. I should say, as part of the capital projects, we expect to advance on the new Bastia High School in 2021, and we have made the provision of the resources for this important project. Another area over which we don't make a lot of noise and fanfare is the consistent support of our government to our citizens who are pursuing tertiary education. For 2020 so far, we have expended about $10 million to assist our students at UE, at UVI, at Monroe College, in Cuba and elsewhere in the pursuance of their studies. This high level of support will continue in 2021. We will continue, of course, to invest heavily in the development of ICT and in its use for the facilitation of some aspects of the government's delivery of service to our people. This is a worthwhile investment, but it would be equally beneficial for the government to invest in the training and reorientation of the officers of the public service to improve their interpersonal and customer service skills to serve the general public with greater courtesy, efficiency, and professionalism. We want a friendly feel when persons engage the front line of the government. And we want our civil servants to make time for members of the public who come to access service from their department. This is critically important. We are a government for and by the people, and it must be reflected in the way we treat the members of the public. Our government is committed to putting in place a new paradigm in which all public officers will be given periodic evaluation of their performance on the job. In fact, this is something that should be continuing. The employees must know where they are, how they are advancing, how they are retrogressing. And of course, we will require that all civil servants adhere to the code of conduct and other relevant rules of engagement which are in force to guide their performance. This is in the best interest of our country in the development of its human resource. As a result, the government has started to work on the conceptualization of policies some already set out before, and to initiate a system of reward and PIP for performance for public service officers. One of the, perhaps, areas which we have to look at, how do we reward those officers who are going beyond the call of duty in a consistent way? Can the system historically, which has been there from ancient times, whether you work well or you work mediocrity, that you will get your increment? Can that work? Can that create a modern 21st century public service? And the answer is no. And so we have a team of persons which will build out in 2021 that is doing some work in this area. Ambassador Extraordinary Plenipotentiary, His Excellency Vance Amory, is providing some leadership in this matter with our Chief Personnel Office. We have support from Dr. Hull, our ambassador at the OAS, and he has a professional team which we hope to bring on board to assist us in moving this particular aspect of our public service life into greater reality. Mr. Speaker, we have been focusing a lot, of course, on healthcare, and the fight to defeat COVID-19 is a critical part of that. I anticipate that when the minister comes, she will spend quite a bit of time not only on COVID, but on other areas. The Ministry of Health's motto is people first, quality always. And of course, we see that reflected in everything that we are attempting to do as we build out a first-class health sector. We have had support from the government of Cuba in the provision of some 34 health specialists to assist us in the fight against the pandemic. 28 of those health professionals were assigned on St. Kitts and 6 on Nevis. The medical specialists have expertise in intensive, critical, and pulmonary care, and they have been mobilized to support our health delivery, not just at our hospital, but at our community-based health centers. I think the entire nation would join me in saying thank you to the government and people of Cuba for their support in providing the requisite expertise. We also want to thank our regional and international partners for their support. The government of the Republic of China, Taiwan, has been a solid source of support throughout this pandemic. Personal protective equipment, etc., time and time again. And I also would wish to place on record our government's gratitude for the support and thank His Excellency Tom Lee for being a good friend for St. Kitts and Nevis at this time of difficulty. Mr. Speaker, the resilience of the health system has been evident over the last 8 months and has been facilitated by the hands-on efforts of our medical professionals. And their work has been guided by a robust national pandemic virus and infection preparedness and response plan. As a result of the implementation of this plan and the extensive collaborative and dedicated efforts of all stakeholders, St. Kitts and Nevis has been successful in keeping the number of confirmed cases at a relatively low level, and of course, we must strive to keep it this way. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the $62 million allocated in the 2020 estimates, we have expended an additional $12.4 million in the fight to defeat COVID-19 here in St. Kitts. That's 12.4 to the health sector to facilitate the purchase of medical equipment, supplies, vehicles, etc., Mr. Speaker. I want to thank all for their support for the efforts of the Ministry of Health as a lead ministry in this fight to defeat COVID-19. I want to say that we have been proactive, Mr. Speaker, and as there's news about the vaccine, to say that our early payment into the COVAX facility will secure our access to safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines. It is expected that the Caribbean region would see the first delivery of vaccines on or before the second quarter of next year. And we hope that the delivery will be expedited, of course, but that matter is not entirely in our hands. I want to take this opportunity to thank such agencies as PAHO, CARPHA, WHO, the European Union, for their collaboration with St. Kitts and Nevis as we attempt to ensure equitable access to safe and affordable vaccines. Mr. Speaker, the government understands the maintenance of good health is critical in this fight to control the virus. The Ministry of Health continues to advance the objectives outlined in our Health Strategic Plan for 2017 to 2022. This year we propose a budget of $65.9 million to support the Ministry of Health in achieving its objectives in 2021. And of course, Mr. Speaker, several initiatives such as the construction of the St. Peter's Health Center, for which we broke ground in September this year, September 2020, the build-out of that work will continue. We commit to the people of St. Peter's that by this time next year, they would have already moved in to a new and improved healthcare facility. That pleases the member for number 8, and all of us for that matter. Mr. Speaker, on the matter of public safety and security, I want to thank all the various agencies for their invaluable contribution to the national effort to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Of course, in the forefront, we would know of NEMA, the National Emergency Management Agency. We would have seen Commissioner Brandy and his team, all the ranks of the Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force. We will know of the contribution that our St. Kitts and Nevis Defence Force has also been playing. The management and staff of the Customs and Excise Department and our Immigration Department, all of them have been at the front line, attempting to keep the country safe, and we want to commend all of them for their efforts. And we certainly will find good ways to reflect our appreciation for the risks they have undertaken on behalf of our country. The Ministry of National Security, Mr. Speaker, has remained focused on achieving its mission, that is to implement strategies and provide resources to improve the national security architecture, human capital and resources in order to ensure that the Federation of St. Christopher Nevis continues to be a safe place to live, to work, to do business, and for persons to visit. And we have significant capital projects that have been supported in the 2021 budget, including the completion of the state-of-the-art police station, which will serve the town of Sandy Point and surrounding communities. This is expected to be completed in 2021. The facility is located at High Point Commercial Development, and it is expected to fulfill its role as a multi-purpose complex. So there we have police, we have fire, we have customs and excise, and we have a magistrate court, all being accommodated at the single site. That, of course, hopefully would have resulted in cost savings to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to thank the contractor, Mr. Skeet, for his work so far, and wish that projects to be delivered, of course, on time and within budget. Mr. Speaker, substantial resources were provided for the construction of the Newcastle Police Station, which was commissioned on the 3rd of December this year. This facility also provides accommodation for the St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services as we continue our efforts to create multi-purpose outposts. And we, Mr. Speaker, are committed to provide a new fire tender. And these, in the good old days, we would say the fire truck. They are now described as fire tender. And they come at a cost of over $1.2 million, according to the fire chief. So we are committed to that support for the Newcastle Fire Hall. And of course, we have identified for repairs and renovation all the police stations in the Federation, starting with the Charlestown Police Station. That's the pick of the Commissioner of Police. Mr. Speaker, in order to enhance our crime detection capacity, government has made considerable investment in technology to ensure that our security forces remain ahead of the efforts of those who attempt to run afoul of the law. And in this regard, Mr. Speaker, we have developed our forensic lab at Tabernacle. We are providing it with well-needed materials and support. In 2021, we will procure a specialized forensic vehicle. This, I'm advised, will allow the department to securely transport the sensitive forensic equipment and evidence collected, as well as improve access to remote crime scenes. This will further enhance the integrity of the investigative process. Moving forward, the Forensics Department will pursue opportunities for specialization and international accreditation of its staff. We aim to achieve accreditation for the provision of professional forensic services to the wider OECS. Little is known of some of the things we are now able to do as a law enforcement arm in St. Kitts and Nevis. When St. Lucia was overwhelmed with homicides, it was to St. Kitts and Nevis Forensic Lab that they looked for support, and we were able to provide that support here. We are thinking forward. We are thinking positively that with the kind of equipment we have in that facility at Tabernacle, we should seek international accreditation. And I want to thank the head of that unit, Ms. Marshall, not sure if she's here, who has provided very good leadership and have brought good results. Mr. Brandy, at the appropriate time, must speak more of how important that forensic lab has been to the solving of a number of crimes that have impacted our country over a long period of time. We have been able to bring closure. So I want to commend the efforts there. As part of our support again for law and order, and for the last couple of years, the country must be aware that we have not shirked from the provision of adequate resources for law and order. Last year, we came with a budget of about $99 million. This year, we come with a budget of somewhere $80+ million for national security. We want to continue the build-out of our closed-circuit television, CCTV, surveillance system across the Federation. We have completed the installation of over 300 cameras in the Bastille area, and we have embarked upon the installation of additional cameras in the rural areas, with a total of over 400 of them at the end of September 2020. Due, of course, to the COVID-related setbacks, the work is not complete, and so we are anticipating that by next year first half, we will be able to scale up and complete our CCTV initiative, not just on St. Kitts, but also on the island of Nevis, where 380 cameras will be provided. We are doing significant work with Motorola, and we have signed agreements with them in collaboration with Medicinal that would help to improve the use of our handheld radios and improve the ability of our security forces to gather intelligence, manage and respond to activities, and improve efficiency in the performance of essential functions. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak very briefly about the positive impact of the peace initiative. Everyone knows that there is peace. Everyone can make the contrast between what was not so long ago. In 2011, this country became known as the murder capital of the world with regret. 36 homicides and record. And it took a lot of effort to bring us to a situation where now, perhaps for the first time in a very long time, we will record homicides in our country below double digit. In other words, below 10. For the first time in a very long time, there was a time over at the Strip. You couldn't go. Brutal killings in our country. And as if to demonstrate where we were in 2015, by February we had already 9 homicides by the time the Team Unity administration came to office. That is not so far away, lest we forget. Because peace, like water, we take for granted. Only when there is no water at home we recognize the importance of water to the community. Because we expect these things as regular and routine supplies from our government. So we're not paying attention when there is water, and sometimes that is why we don't conserve water enough. Say, when there is crime, it becomes the talk every day on the radio shows. When you have a drastic reduction, how many of the commentators, how many are paying attention, commending the efforts of our law enforcement officers and the government for excellent delivery in bringing peace to our land? The Peace Initiative was a new innovation which my government brought, and we had the doubting Thomases. But the burden of leading the country rests with the cabinet. And the people expect us to lead them where they must go. And we have said repeatedly, and I for my part as Minister of National Security and Prime Minister says, we cannot put a price tag on the life of any citizen or resident. And the government must always be seen to do all in its power to keep the country safe. Indeed, that is rule one of politics. The most fundamental responsibility of a nation state is to defend its jurisdiction, not necessarily against violent influences coming in, but inside you must be able to maintain calm. If you can't exercise legitimate power and authority in the confines of the jurisdiction, you become a failed state. Everybody have their own militia because the state fails to become relevant in that context. That was what we were becoming. That is why we had to bring this novel intervention to St. Kitts and Nevis. That is why we had to put resources to back it to ensure that we give those who are vulnerable an opportunity for a fresh start. And we are still a long way to go, because the Peace Initiative is just about a year or so, early hour yet, but moving in the right direction. And we want to keep it that way. 2020 would record the least number of gang-related crimes in the country of St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to thank that group. We call them, what was the name we described them as? So Brandy cannot speak, so I'll have to try and remember. But they were basically the early intervention team. They comprise of bankers. They comprise of members of the church. They comprise of guidance counselors out of our school who came forward, and they recognize the deleterious impact of crime and violence in our country. And they say they were prepared to volunteer to go out and speak and meet with the gangs in St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to thank them. Some of them were very terrified. It could not be easy, because they were meeting persons, quote unquote, described at risk, persons who by and large, or already some of them, had difficulties with the law. And imagine the young female guidance counselor going into a particular location with all these, quote unquote, dreaded men who can do bodily harm, taking a chance to restore peace to our country. We owe them a debt of gratitude. There's still more work. We said that part of the Peace Initiative is a recognition that there is an alternative pathway, and those who, as it were, have gone off the pathway, by and large, who will take responsibility. When the entities of socialization in the society fail, when the family could not fulfill its responsibility to the son and to the daughter, when the church could not be an important agent of socialization, when our school does not equip him or her with a quality education, when the rest of us turn a blind eye, who then will close the gap? That is what we are dealing with. And that is what that particular alternative pathway program, dubbed the Peace Initiative, was attempted to do. The country's future was being diminished. Opportunities for economic engagement were being stymied because crime was out of control. Somebody had to move forward. And a small group of no more than 10, less than 10 in fact, came forward to the cabinet and said, we will give it a try. From the bottom of my heart, I thank them. I also want to thank all the so-called bad boys, all the so-called at-risk young men and women who agreed to give peace a chance, because we can speak today of success because those young people have again tasted what it is to be free. They have again been able to experience what it is to move from West Bastille into Central Bastille into East Bastille and not having to look over their shoulders. They have tasted freedom anew. Their captivity, their mental slavery is being worked on. And they have come back with a view to try something new. And some of us never appreciate that. They are our people to carry. As we set to build out a Garden of Eden, we cannot afford as a small country to lose anyone, as we had been losing them to crime and violence in our country. Had it not been for some intervention somewhere, when you see who are the young men and women who had been engaged in that lifestyle, you say it could have been any of us. Any of us, but for the grace of God, but for the intervention of a family member, but for the intervention of a church, and perhaps a Pentecostal church. Alive, man, with a redemption song for our young people. Too many of us at times forget that that road to Damascus has special significance. That on the road to Damascus, there was a revelation. Saul had a moment to become Paul. Pastor Cumberbatch would know that, and Bishop Collins would know that, and many of us would know that. It is the story of the second chance. It is a story that again we can say to our young people, there is a light that can come out of you. And we want to give you a chance, but you also have to take a movement too. And the movement must be, you must bring in your guns and your arms. They have obligations. We are willing to get the supermarket down the road to give you a job. But you have to behave when you reach that particular entity. We are prepared to get a loan for you from the development bank, from a credit union, for you to engage in constructive activity again. Your commitment must be to eschew crime and violence. That is what the peace initiative was and remains. In the next year, of course, we will refine it, having regard to the experience we have had over this short period, to make it a better program. Indeed, Mr. Brandy told me this week, Mr. Brandy is the Commissioner of Police, that he has had calls overseas. People are wanting to do a special program and St. Kitts and Nevis now about how we have been able to reduce crime so dramatically over the last 3 years. 20% reduction year after year. And as we stand here, total major crimes in the country down by 22%. We are not yet out of the woods, because the preference must be for zero homicides. The preference must be that there be no major crime. But then we wouldn't be living in a secular world. We wouldn't be living in any world at all. Because in every society, secular or religious, there will be crime. And the question with the state must ask itself, what is the level of tolerance that we will allow with respect to crimes in the country? And that is what we have determined. We want to keep it very low, where nobody talk about it. Opposition not talk about it. People in the call-in program now talk about it because it is alive. And people have come rightly to accept the new status, the new environment of peace in the land. That is what has happened. That is part of a major transformation of St. Kitts and Nevis over the last couple of years by the Team Unity Administration. And we could talk a lot about this, but Mr. Petty will be concerned if we said nothing about another new initiative, the Explorers Model. As we stand here, the Ministry of National Security has chaperoned the development of a youth group that is also now becoming a best practice for entities at home and abroad. Somewhere in America, Mr. Petty is to go. Rosemary Isles, she wants to go. To be able to explain and for people to draw and the experience of St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of youth interventions as part of a strategy of crime containment and reduction in St. Kitts and Nevis. Mr. Petty, I wouldn't do you justice because time would not allow us in terms of what we have been able to do to build out in our community so far. The largest youth group, organized youth group in the country is the Explorers Youth Group attached to the Ministry of National Security. Over 1,000 plus children involved across the length and breadth of St. Kitts and Nevis. Their role models are the police officers who are leading them, who are engaging their families, who are engaging their communities to ensure that the peace become a long-lived experience for all of us. Resilience of our program is the focus of study, that is the Explorers, at the Northeastern University in Boston and Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Imagine that. Our small country is engaged in collaborative action with Georgetown University in D.C. and Northeastern University in Boston about a model conceived and developed right here in the context of our determination to wipe out criminal activity, the upsurge that we had in crimes in our country. We want to thank a number of private sector partners for working with national security in general, but more so with the Explorers Group, Ross University, Veterinary Medicine, Sun Island Clothes, Windsor University, Karen's Fabrics have all continued their support, and we want to thank them. And of course, the clergy, the church, has been a significant partner in our efforts to maintain law and order. So we say thank you. The Ministry of National Security will continue to play its vital role in securing the safer and stronger future for St. Kitts and Nevis. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the men and women who serve in the various departments of the ministry have demonstrated their commitment to the job, and they have kept us safe. In 2021, it is proposed that 63.5 million will be allocated to recurrent expenditure. This represents a 5% increase over the 2020 allocation. In addition to the allocation for recurrent programs, the proposed 2021 allocation for capital expenditure is $23.7 million. We are putting our money where our mouth is, not just talking the talk, understanding the constructive role that government must play. Even as we are investing so heavily in state-sponsored security, we are building up the capacity of the private sector operators, training, developing an MOU to have better participation between themselves and the lawful other entities of the state engaged in law enforcement. Significant work is being done, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, energy and water critical, and we have touched those, Mr. Speaker. Recently, we've had a major development in terms of alternative energy. The official groundbreaking ceremony involving Skellig and Loclantre, which took place, I think it was just last week, erecting a 35.6 megawatt solar plant is what we hope to achieve right there in the Bastia Valley, Mr. Speaker. I must commend Minister Patrice Liebert, the former Minister Ambassador Ian Patrice Liebert, the former Minister with responsibility for public utilities, who started this project, and commend our Deputy Prime Minister so soon after the election of the Team Unity government to ensure the start of this critical project. What are some of the things we expect to happen? A US $70 million investment. That is what this represents. This will be the largest solar plant, I understand, within the Caribbean region. Largest, in the smallest country, taking us further than any other country in the build-out of green energy. Leadership matters. And on this side, we are demonstrating real leadership, delivering for the enhancement of the lives of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. I am advised of this $70 million project. Not 1 cent initially will come from the federal government or from SCELEC. The local economy, I'm advised, will benefit from about $30 million spent on materials and services. And we anticipate about 200 persons will benefit from jobs there. Mr. Speaker, when the Deputy Prime Minister comes, he assures me that he will have some more to say regarding that. Water, vital for life, vital for health, vital for everything. We are well aware of some of the challenges we have had in the last year in relation to a reliable supply of water. Commitment we made. We are now at a stronger and better place to deliver a more reliable supply of water. And in this regard, we have taken special note of the challenges at Kean, at the challenges at Lodge, the challenges elsewhere in St. Peter's and around the country, and we have a proposal for dealing with it in collaboration with BEAD. And those will be worked out in the new year. So at long last, the perennial problem of an absence, a dearth of water, specifically in Kean, will be handled and would be resolved as part of the legacy of this Team Unity administration. That is a significant development. Since I was a youth attending school at Kean High, water was a problem. When the Accountant General was going there, it was a problem. Perhaps even when Dreen almost got there, it was a problem. So we're talking about a long intergenerational battle of inadequate supplies of water. It will take this visionary Team Unity government, and in particular, the commitment of the member for number 8 to bring this matter to resolution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I turn to the financial services. Mr. Speaker, this is a critical area of our international engagement. In 2020, we passed a variety of legislation to ensure that we are in good standing with the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, with the OECD, with EU, important bodies. And we are committed, Mr. Speaker, to continue to spearhead the fight against anti-money laundering. Mr. Speaker, and in this regard, legislatively, we have set the framework and we have established a National Anti-Money Laundering Committee, which is chaired by the Attorney General. We formalized these arrangements, Mr. Speaker, through the passage of the Anti-Money Laundering National Committee Act in 2020. Mr. Speaker, we are expecting early next year that our country will come up for assessment, Mr. Speaker. We do believe that the substantive work which has been done over the last year, and even before last year, Mr. Speaker, would put us in good stead. One of the areas that the evaluators look at is the adequacy of the legislative framework to address the issues that have been raised. And we, again, have quite a milieu of legislative enactments that we have brought to the Parliament and passed that would enhance our own ability to deliver on the expectations of the international community. The legislative enactments indicate, Mr. Speaker, the highest level of commitment by our government to eradicate illicit activities and financial crimes in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. These, of course, will clearly enhance our country's reputation as a responsible and cooperative member of the international community. Mr. Speaker, earlier I spoke to the issue of the international tax governance agenda and how, by and large, it is an important area of good governance for us, that we have had to make significant investments in these areas to meet our treaty obligations. We stand ready in 2021 to provide support in the arena of international tax governance, and the government continues to build and expand capacity and commit resources in critical areas. We are maintaining our focus on the pertinent issues as they arise in order to safeguard the good name of our country against serious reputational damage which can be caused by a lack of compliance with international norms. And those standards, Mr. Speaker, are continuously being evolving. And that is why from time to time we are going into the Parliament, amending legislation, amending our corporation tax regime, amending the the Business Ordinance Act in Nevis. All of these are requirements that we have to meet to satisfy those who are evaluating our compliance with the good governance agenda, Mr. Speaker. We are pleased that at this particular moment in time, Mr. Speaker, St. Kitts and Nevis is not on any blacklist. It took a lot of hard work and teamwork, and I want to commend our own Ministry of Finance here, the Financial Secretary, the Deputy Financial Secretary, Mr. Giff, and of course the team from Nevis and the Office of the Attorney General for giving us some strategic support in ensuring that St. Kitts and Nevis is removed for many lists with a derogatory connotation regarding our standing in the international community. And so, Mr. Speaker, I now turn to our medium-term fiscal outlook. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal surpluses that have been achieved under the watch of the Team Unity administration speak volumes for our government's ability to properly manage the financial affairs of our country. It was the accumulation of those surpluses that enabled us to withstand the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic thus far and provide a well-needed financial support to so many households and businesses over the past months without having to resort to borrowing up to this point in time. The emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic significantly impacted our revenue collections on account of the downturn in economic activity. Additionally, the various forms of tax relief that were granted as part of the economic stimulus package also reduced the government inflows. The situation was further compounded by the incurrence of unforeseen expenditure that was related to the government response to the pandemic. Consequences of the foregoing is that for 2020, the projected financial outcomes are for an overall deficit of $71.4 million a primary deficit of $51.8 million, and a recurrent account surplus of $31.4 million. Mr. Speaker, we were prudent in our actions, but very mindful that we had a duty as a government to protect our citizens and our residents during this health pandemic. A duty, Mr. Speaker, which we took very seriously. A significant amount of money was therefore expended, among other things, to buy ventilators, personal protective equipment, and also to recruit medical practitioners with the requisite expertise to safeguard the lives and health of our people. This, of course, was in keeping with our Life First strategy. Save lives so that we can then rebuild our country better and stronger. Mr. Speaker, the Team Unity government will make every effort to ensure that our beloved country recovers from the pandemic. In doing so, we have devised a fiscal strategy for the medium term that has three main objectives. Firstly, we must stabilize the fiscal outcomes by containing and reprioritizing the recurrent expenditure. Secondly, we must facilitate recovery and reignite the economy by adopting a pro-growth approach to the development of our capital budget for 2021 and beyond. And that is why, even in the face of reduced flows, we are proposing to spend about $192 million in capital projects to keep the economy up and growing. The third objective of our fiscal strategy, Mr. Speaker, is that we must manage and maintain the public sector debt at prudent levels. We have been doing very well in this regard. Indeed, until the COVID-19 pandemic, we were the best in the OECS, as at the end of December 2019, our debt-to-GDP ratio stood at 55%. The central bank had set a target of a debt-to-GDP ratio of 60% by 2030. By 2018, if not 2017, 13 years ahead of time, we managed to get our debt to GDP below the international benchmark of 60%. Critically important. Small country doing amazingly good things that people are taking for granted. It wasn't always like this. There was a time in the history of our country when the debt to GDP ratio almost hit 200%. What a long way we have come. These are things, Mr. Speaker, that will be part of the legacy of the Team Unity administration. Our ability to maintain the debt to GDP ratio below the 60% benchmark, Mr. Speaker, was a commendable feat. Moving forward, Mr. Speaker, for 2021, in the context of the urgent need to stave off the recession, to engage in additional financing to support some of our projects, Mr. Speaker, we are expecting to see an increase in the debt to GDP ratio. But importantly, we have set ourselves within the medium term to restore it back again to the 60% debt to GDP ratio. With respect to our outlook for 2021 to 2023, recurrent revenue is projected to be approximately $724.2 million per annum, while the average annual amount of recurrent expenditure would likely be in the region of $642.3 million. Additionally, the medium-term capital expenditure projections are expected to average about $122.3 million per annum. It is therefore anticipated that the fiscal operation of the government could result on average in a recurrent account surplus of $81.9 million. That is over the next 3 years, the average, an overall deficit of $25.4 million, and a primary deficit of $8.6 million. These are the three critical economic indicators that the international institution uses to evaluate proper management and good management of our country. Based on these projections, Mr. Speaker, it is likely that the potential impact of the pandemic would require the government to borrow in order for us to achieve our development objectives for 2021 and for the short, medium term. The contracting of new debt, coupled with the general downturn in the economic activity around the world, and here in St. Kitts and Nevis, we spent time discussing that, would likely result in the debt to GDP ratio rising to about 69.7% in 2020, then declining in 2021 to 65.4%, and then back to 60% in 2023. So we have a plan that will get us there. This is an emergency. This is more than an emergency. This is a pandemic. And the wisdom is that we must spend quickly rather than go to it in a peaceful way. We must spend now, because the quicker we get ourselves out of the recession, the better it will be. And then, once we borrow, we must be in a position to pay. And we will not undertake any debt. Indeed, the lenders will be foolhardy if they were to engage in lending without assurances of repayment. So whatever we do will be manageable. What is important is that we have a clear plan to deal with the worst recession in a lifetime and to rise out of it by 2023 and to restore our fiscal indicators to the best international standards which they used to be. Mr. Speaker, we are expecting the positive resurgence in economic growth to be driven by developments in construction and tourism sectors. Construction, which is the single largest economic sector, will grow by about 4.2% over the medium term. Construction is expected to resume on a number of hotel projects. We identified them before, including Hillsborough Residences, Ramada Inn, Seaview Garden Hotel. And of course, we are going to have construction activity, which we referred to earlier, on our Island Main Road and the housing developments which will take place. At the end of October, Mr. Speaker, we opened our borders fully. The borders were open in a restrictive way under the state of emergency. And I recall it was right here, perhaps in this ballroom, but from this hotel, where we launched our virtual campaign that I had to repeat every night, a line to help our people. The borders are closed for health reasons. Borders are closed for health reasons, Mr. Speaker. We have now reopened at this particular time. And since the opening, Mr. Speaker, at the end of October, we have seen the resumption of commercial flights, including American Airlines, Seabourn, Winair, and Liat. On account of these activities, the sector is expected to rebound in 2021 with a projected growth of 8.1% and an average growth of 6.4% over the medium term. This is something that I'm sure all whose livelihood are dependent on the tourism sector would appreciate. We spoke earlier about the interventions and support we will give to the yachting sector, to the build-out of our health tourism and other areas. Mr. Speaker, we are expecting in 21, as a result of the significant investment and support to see a rebound in manufacturing and agriculture. The manufacturing sector is projected to grow by 7.2%, and agriculture will grow by 6.4%. Mr. Speaker, the costs of responding to the challenges caused by the pandemic have been significant. We have had to spend what we did not anticipate we would spend at the beginning of the year. And these expenditures were, of course, necessary and urgent if we were to fight and defeat the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, our ability to execute and sustain our various plans outlined earlier to build the resilience to exogenous shocks, to ensure the recovery from the prolonged pandemic and transform our economy would, of course, be reliant on the collection of the projected revenue. In formulating our projections of revenue, we spent a lot of time earlier speaking to the capital side and the recurrent side of the budget in terms of expenditure. Equally, there must be a balancing act, and we have to get the resources, of course, to minimize the need for loan financing and to ensure the timely delivery of our projects. In formulating our projection for revenue, we took into consideration the impact of the pandemic on the economy and our expectations for growth over the medium term. We are also mindful that the fulfillment of our plans would be heavily influenced by the compliance by our taxpayers. I therefore strongly urge all taxpayers to abide by the laws of the land and to settle their tax liabilities when they become due. Indeed, if you are not able to meet all of them, the wise thing to do is to have a meeting with the Comptroller of Customs or the relevant authority and to have a payment plan. We are sensitive to the needs, but at the same time, those who have commitments to the government must be prepared to settle those commitments in due time. I want to make a special appeal to the employers, including the self-employed, to ensure that every person who is registered, every person in their employ is registered with the Social Security Board. And we want to encourage those who are self-employed employees to ensure that they are registered. One of the things that we learned as a result of the COVID-19 and the displacement of workers was that a number of employers did not pay their Social Security. We are making an appeal. When that happens, everything is put on hold. Severance payment is put on hold because your records are not complete. And unless we have the good information from the Social Security, the Labor Department cannot proceed easily. So there is an all-of-society approach that is needed with respect to labor relations. And I know the Chamber leadership is here. We want to encourage her, to encourage the business community, to ensure that when they deduct the contributions from their employees' pay, that all the contributions are paid over to Social Security Board within the stipulated time. Delays in transmitting the collection hurt the employees' ability to receive their benefits on time. Labor Department can't work magic, can't create figures. The figures must come from the employers to the Social Security Board. So I thought I would make that special plea there. Mr. Speaker, as we take a closer look at the incoming fiscal year, we are projecting that we would realize a total of $761.1 million in total revenue and grants, of which our recurrent revenue will be $738.9 million. Total revenue and grants would be comprised of $440 $0.8 million from tax revenues, $298.1 million from non-tax revenue, and $22.2 million is projected from development aid. Total expenditure for 2021 has been estimated at $831.4 million. Of this amount, $638.2 million will be for recurrent expenditure, and $193.2 million would be our capital expenditure and net lending. Based on the projections for revenue and expenditure, it is anticipated that a recurrent account surplus of $100.7 million will be realized in 2021. There will be an overall deficit of $70.3 million, and the primary deficit will be at $52.9 million. Mr. Speaker, we are guardedly optimistic about the prospects for positive growth in 2021. And when we consider the growth prospects for the Federation, we recognize the constructive role that both public and private sectors must play if we are to successfully achieve and sustain positive growth in the economy over the medium term. At this juncture, we must seize the opportunities to work together to identify the economic, fiscal, and social policies that could effectively help to drive the recovery of our economy in an equitable, inclusive, and sustainable manner. Some of these ideas were shared with our dialogue with the civil society partners, and some of the ideas we received from that dialogue have been incorporated in the 2021 budget. Together, we must rise to the challenge of reigniting the economy, stimulating sufficient economic activity that would move us beyond the economic contraction caused by the pandemic in 2020, and an all-of-society approach is required. Mr. Speaker, in our efforts to help stimulate the recovery and to further minimize the impact of the pandemic on the economy, we are proposing an investment of $192.7 million in the capital projects. A substantial portion of these, I've outlined, will be going into construction. In addition to this, Mr. Speaker, the government would extend the period for the implementation of certain critical elements of the stimulus package, until June 2021. I want to repeat this. The government is proposing that for 2021, we are going to extend certain elements of the 2020 stimulus package. These are the areas for which we will provide relief and incentivize the economy further. The removal of VAT and import duty will continue until June 2021 on the additional hygiene items such as hand sanitizers, hand sanitizer dispensing machines, disinfecting wipes, rubbing alcohol, gloves, masks, protective gowns. These you would recognize are essential in the fight to defeat COVID-19. We had, as part of our stimulus package, extended relief by removing VAT and import duty from these items. We are proposing that this removal will continue up to the middle of 2021, when they will be further reviewed. The removal of import duty and customs service charge until June 2021 on vegetables, fruits, fruit juices, cough and cold preparations. The waiver of payments for consumption of water until June 2021 for individuals who have been laid off by businesses or experience a reduction in earnings as a consequence of COVID-19. Again, if you are a victim of the COVID-19, you no longer have a job. You used to work at Marriott. We could establish a causal relationship between your lack of earnings and the COVID-19. You would make application to the water department for relief, and this will be accorded to you up to the period June 2021. There will be a 24% reduction of the corporate tax rate from 33% to 25% from now until June 2021 for businesses that retain at least 75% of their employees. This again is an extension of one of the positive interventions we make to help businesses at this particular moment of difficulty. Since we are still in the midst of the pandemic, we have determined that it will be prudent to extend this relief. The reduction of unincorporated business tax by 50% from 4% to 2% will continue until June 2021. We will provide an additional $5 million stimulus over the next 2 years to the agricultural sector to ensure greater food and nutrition security for the Federation. In the initial assessment, we had made $10 million, provided for $10 million for the agricultural sector. And we are planning now over the next 2 years to provide $5 million as additional stimulus. That is separate and apart from the normal budgetary allocations. We will waive the payments for the consumption of water by farmers until June 2021. This is awesome support we are providing here to the agricultural sector and to the other sectors. We have made a provision for $3 million above the amount provided in the 2020 estimates to support poverty alleviation. This would help us to provide support to 500 persons should their socioeconomic situation warrant it. So long as there is a pandemic, the government will be caring in its response, and we have made provision to assist workers who may become displaced, because really the truth is there's a wild card in the pandemic's behavior, and we do not know what the future holds. The scientists, the doctors, they are learning as they go, because the pandemic really is still very young. It's had a very short period, and so all of the facts and the science is not yet readily available. In addition, Mr. Speaker, we will provide another $7 million to further capitalize the severance fund, which is managed by the Accountant General in 2021. We are doing this basically to ensure that persons will be able to get their severance claims settled. Of course, the settlement of it, I repeat, is dependent upon the employer submitting the required information to the Social Security Department, because we have to be able to compute, for example, how long you have been working, your earnings, etc., over the time you would have indicated on your application form. We believe, Mr. Speaker, that the extension of these measures would help to advance the recovery process, and most importantly, it would extend important lifelines to affected families and businesses. On the expenditure side, Mr. Speaker, we have been careful to ensure that the government spending does not spiral out of control. And some of the cost containment measures we propose for 2020 would be the containment of new employment, particularly for non-essential posts, a 10% cut in selected expenditure heads, such as supplies and materials, restrictions on overseas travel, that require funding by the government. Mr. Speaker, it's important for the public to know that the government has adopted a new ethos regarding the operation of state-owned enterprises. State-owned enterprises are corporations like the NHC, SCASPA, SCELEC, and so on. We believe that all state entities should be financially self-sustaining. For some time now, some of these entities have become a burden on the Treasury as they are unable to meet their financial outlay required to maintain the operations. It does not make sense for us to carry on with operating entities that have fulfilled their primary mandate. If this situation is left unattended, we run the risk not only of allowing inefficiencies in the broader public sector to persist, but also building up unsustainable levels of debt. The fundamental position of the government is that the operations of failing state-owned entities would be evaluated and a determination made in respect of closure, rationalization, or amalgamation. We also expect the board of directors to fulfill their requirements of accountability as set out in the Finance Administration Act and the relevant enabling legislation by which they are bound. A new era of discipline is being encouraged. Mr. Speaker, the good news is that the Team Unity administration has been careful over the last 5 years not to impose any new taxes on the people of this federation. This is a remarkable feat. For 5 years in a row, my government would have managed this country, fulfilling our mandates and increasing the range of support to the social sectors, including education, health, national security, the poor and indigent, our women-headed households, and at-risk groups. We have done all these things and more without adding one new tax. Indeed, far from adding new taxes, we have been subtracting, reducing, and removing extant taxes. For example, we removed the onerous VAT from food, medicine, and educational supplies in 2015. You have heard in this budget what we propose to do with respect to personal protective equipment, removing VAT and duty. In 2021 budget, we have extended the reduction and the applicable rate of corporate income tax and unincorporated tax, reducing them by a significant 24% and 50% respectively. This, of course, will make St. Kitts and Nevis the country with the lowest corporate taxes in the region, at least within the OECS. At a time when we could reasonably be asking for shared sacrifices for the greater collective national good by imposing new taxes as some countries have done, my government prefers to waive them or waive some of them, apply moratoria and reduce others, all to help our people and registered businesses successfully overcome the challenges of COVID-19. We are, however, considering the update of a number of existing fee structures for government services, most of which have not been changed in many years. Further, consistent with our efforts to address the prevalence of non-communicable diseases, NCDs in the Federation, we will carry out the necessary research to determine whether the timing is right for an increase in the excise tax on alcohol and tobacco products. Such legislative enactments have already been adopted in some CARICOM member states like Grenada and Barbados. The government, of course, must use all measures at its disposal to spare persons and our country from the harmful effects of their actions, and in particular, and the healthcare systems of our country. NCDs are the most serious burden now on our health system, and lifestyle changes are necessary. We have to make shifts in what we eat, eating more nutritious, more healthy meals, buying local, eating local, drinking local, and of course we have to reduce our intake of drugs. And part of the responsibility of the government will be to help urge these lifestyle changes by legislative and other public education policies. That is why a few years ago we launched the St. Kitts Move and the Nevis Move to again encourage our people into the beneficial knowledge of the beneficial effects of physical activity in the fight against NCDs. And I want to thank the PS of Health for leading that particular initiative. Mr. Speaker, a new and emerging area of focus for the government will be the build-out of the medicinal cannabis industry. Earlier this year, the pertinent legislation, the Cannabis Act No. 8 of 2020, was passed in the Honorable House. We therefore intend to take additional steps to advance the development of this industry. One important step planned for 2021 is the appointment of suitably qualified persons to serve on this authority. The primary function of this new body would be to regulate, monitor, and control the cultivation, supply, possession, production, and use of cannabis and for related matters. It also provides for the lawful access of medicinal cannabis as an alternative treatment for persons who are suffering from a qualifying medical condition and for a comprehensive licensing scheme. We are convinced that our people, particularly our small entrepreneurs and farmers, could benefit from the development of the local industry here in the Federation. Several direct and indirect benefits are apparent in this new area. We will identify suitable lands for allocation for marijuana crop farmers, the various types of licenses to be issued, and the cost of same will be determined after consultations and in conjunction with the board of directors that is provided for in the current legislation. My government will ensure that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis benefit from this industry. And I want at this point to record appreciation to the National Marijuana Commission that did the first set of work. This was headed by Dr. Hazel Laws, our CMO. And then we had the Core Implementation Cannabis Committee, which was headed by Dr. Wycliffe Baird. We thank them all. Mr. Speaker, given the grave circumstances across the globe, our country has fared well relatively. The global and national challenges have revealed that notwithstanding our achievements, there remain considerable work to be done. Innovative forward thinking are required as we chart a new development pathway in a world that we hope would soon be categorized as post-COVID-19 era. The need to build resilience has been a clarion call since 2015 with the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. My team Unity Administration has been given a new mandate in June this year, and we have set the wheels in motion to continue to target all of the critical elements that must be given attention to preserve our continued development and survival. Over the medium term, we would pay attention to reorienting and accelerating investments in our health systems with special attention paid to the National Health Insurance, and Minister Hamilton will speak to these in his own contribution to this debate. Mr. Speaker, St. Kitts and Nevis has attained a relatively high level of social and economic development through the implementation of important policy initiatives over the years. Threats to this progress have been continuous, but at every turn, we have emerged more resilient and determined to continue to advance our country. At no time in our history have our strength and resilience been tested as during the last 8 months of 2020 with the emergence of a once-in-a-century pandemic, the development of global value chains, and the technologies which enable us to traverse from one end of the globe to the next in a matter of hours have made the entire world susceptible to the contagion of the COVID-19 virus. As the virus reached our Twin Island Federation, we took the necessary actions to keep our people safe. Mr. Speaker, we are mindful that the reopening of our borders at this time will provide an avenue for the recovery of the tourism sector, spurring activity for a vast number of businesses and providing employment for workers. The upside to the challenges caused by the pandemic is that ample opportunities for an increase in entrepreneurial activity have been presented. In recent times, we have seen how innovative our people can be. Many businesses were forced to re-examine their business processes and practices, streamlining them to gain efficiencies. Some businesses have had to be more flexible with their operations and find new and varied paths to accomplish their objectives. Opportunities exist out there, but some persons may need a little help and guidance to see them through. And this is in part of the work that we expect our new Ministry of Entrepreneurship, Entertainment, Talent Development, etc. will play. I therefore want to encourage businesses and individuals to become more creative and to repurpose existing skills to meet the needs that have emerged since the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, my government, of course, is committed to the rule of law. And in this regard, we continue to support the work of the judiciary and parliament. Our top ranking on the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index repeatedly provides external validation of the excellent state of the rule of law, democracy, and good governance in our country. In this historic and memorable year of 2020, the Office of the Attorney General and the Ministry of Justice and Legal Affairs carried the Herculean responsibility of providing the legal framework to support the efforts of our health professionals and our national security officials as they guided our interventions to keep our people safe from COVID-19. As if that were not enough, the Attorney General and his team rose to the special occasion of providing guidance for the conduct of democratic elections in St. Kitts and Nevis amid a dangerous pandemic. On behalf of the Cabinet and the country, I extend a public thank you to our Attorney General and his team for an excellent job. The Attorney General will be given the special honor to elucidate on the deliverables for his ministry in 2021, having regard, of course, to the budgetary allocations outlined in the Appropriation Act 2021-2020. Of course, Mr. Speaker, this special privilege will be accorded to all ministers who are expected to report and account for the sums allocated to the subjects under their portfolio in the estimates which have been approved by the Honorable House. In closing, I take this opportunity to thank the staff of the Ministry of Finance And we have here the Financial Secretary, Mrs. Hilary Hazel, the Deputy Financial Secretary, Mrs. Sylvia Gums, our Accountant General, Mr. Levi Bratcher. I see Mr. Edward Giff, our Controller of Customs. I'm sure Mr. Butler, our Controller of Edward Giff is Inland Revenue, and Mr. Butler is our Controller of Customs. They are part of the revenue collection machinery. I want to salute all of them, and of course the entire body of public servants who are here, our PSs, etc. Their collective work led to the finalization of the 2021 budget. It was a challenging experience, Mr. Speaker, in the context of a pandemic that is shifting, that is evolving so rapidly, for the technocrats within the government to be able to come together and to deliver a budget that makes sense for the country. A government that preserves and consecrates the future for St. Kitts and Nevis. A budget that supports the poor and the indigent. A budget that brings relief to the private sector and to all our citizens. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank a few other persons before closing. I want to thank the government printry for their commitment and dedication in this exercise. They perhaps are the least known of the entities involved in the production of the material for the budget. Without their hard work, we would not be able to get copies of the various reports which were laid today. So I want to let them know that we appreciate their efforts on this critical statement of public accountability. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I say a hearty thank you to all public servants for their support, their hard work, and their contribution to the success of the Team Unity administration and by extension, our beloved country. I must mention the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, the Christian fraternity, and of course the ordinary people of this beautiful country for their advice and suggestions, much of which we have taken on board in the finalization of the 2021 budget. It is my view, Mr. Speaker, that this budget, in keeping with our mandate, brings a stronger and safer future closer to reality. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, I so move its approval. I thank you.